It's clear that in most school districts, we serve a diverse population of students. From English learners to gifted students, from socioeconomically disadvantaged students to students with disabilities. And it's this last group of kids that this module will be focusing on. California Education Code Section 610, 661, 60240, 60312, and 60313, not to mention the Federal No Child Left Behind Act, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and even Sections 504 and 508 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 are all governing documents and laws that mandate meeting the needs of students with disabilities. There's a lot of advocacy in this field, and I trust that you, as modern educational leaders, recognize the tremendous need for supporting these students, because I think you know that that wasn't always the case. Students with disabilities, or special education students as they're often referred to, were all but written off in years past. Here in California, we have nearly 690,000 students that require special education services and accommodations. We're talking about infants, preschoolers, on up to young adults as old as 22. Across the nation, we're talking about estimates of up to 5% of students, which amounts to something on the order of 12 million kids that need accommodations. And what's more, we want these students to be educated with their peers as much as possible, in the least restrictive environment we can provide. And that's where assistive technologies can play a big part. Disability means many different things, including students with intellectual disabilities, speech or language impairments, visual impairments, emotional disturbances, deafness, autism, and so on. There isn't one set way to meet the needs of this population. It takes specialized education, and my hat goes off to the educators that work tirelessly with students to provide an excellent learning experience for them day in and day out. And I think if you speak with any of them, they'll attest to the power of the assistive technologies that are now mainstays in many classrooms. Assistive technologies enable children with disabilities to not only participate more fully in school, but in their life. They aid in the development of intellectual, social, and motor skills, and they enable children to interact with their environment, to learn along with their peers, and do things for themselves. Now, I rattled off a bunch of ordinances and regulations earlier, but it's the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act of 2004, or IDEA, that fundamentally requires each child, regardless of his disability, receive a free, appropriate public education. It's the act that authorizes IEPs and sets specific procedures for properly developing IEPs, including a process for determining the need for assistive technologies for a learner. Although there are many ways to assist students with disabilities, the technologies now available for them in this modern age are incredibly powerful and make a real difference in their achievement. But notice I'm using the plural form. There are many assistive technologies, each with a specific application. It's just an umbrella term, a catch-all used to categorize a slew of both high-tech and low-tech solutions for students. For example, the use of portable word processors or laptops can help with the mechanics of writing, but sometimes alternative forms of computer access have to be considered based on the specific disability at hand, or the orthopedic disability a student may have. Sometimes typing is not an option, so the student may need an input device such as a joystick that connects to an on-screen keyboard, or voice recognition software, or word prediction software to reduce the need for keystrokes. To meet their reading needs, technologies such as scanners with talking word processors might be required, or software for organization of ideas and studying. To help with math, a student might need a talking calculator or software with templates for math computation. So during this module, we'll look at many of these issues and the assistive technologies that help meet the needs of students with disabilities. To be sure we're speaking the same language, assistive technology is any device or a gadget or hardware or software that's used by a student with a disability to do things for themselves that might otherwise be difficult or impossible to do because of the disability. This might include mobility devices like wheelchairs, or peripherals like special mice or eye gaze communication systems. The way parents request assistive technologies from schools is by making a written request to the school asking for an assessment for assistive technology that their child may need. The request will typically describe the student's need in as much detail as possible. Once that request is made, the school district has 15 days to respond with a proposed assessment plan. Parents then have 15 days to consent to the proposed assessments, and once the district receives parental consent, it has 50 days to complete the assessment and develop the IEP. Now, if the student already has an IEP, planning for assistive technology should be determined along with any other special education needs as part of the IEP process, which might include planning for the use of the assistive technology outside of the school setting if its use supports the students receiving free appropriate public education. So, what are these high-tech tools for use with this population? Well, you'll be viewing a number of videos during this module to orient you with various assistive technologies, and you'll have a few assignments to get through. First, you'll need to find a resource employee at your school district or any K-12 school district that's responsible for supporting the assessment of requests for assistive technologies to meet students' needs, and you'll need to interview them. Every school district should have a process in place for evaluating the need for assistive technologies, because assistive technologies must be considered on students' individual education plan, or IEP, or on their individual family services plan if the child is under the age of 3. So, for your assignment, you'll need to interview the responsible person at a school district and find out things like what happens when there is a disagreement between the family and the IEP team regarding the need for a specific assistive technology. What types of technologies does the school district see in use? How do schools assess a student's need for assistive technology? Once you've conducted your interview, you'll need to record a brief video of yourself explaining your learnings and reflections on the interview and upload it to YouTube, because you'll also be tasked with captioning the video. Now, you may recall that I mentioned Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act earlier. That section of the federal law provides guidelines for key practices related to accessibility that educators and digital content providers should adhere to. Now, there are many technical standards involved, like the appropriate use of headings in web pages and documents, tagging non-text elements with text to identify what the element is, also known as alt texting, as well as video captioning. So this specific assignment is designed to offer you an opportunity to learn how to caption videos to meet the accessibility needs of all learners. Of course, we'll provide you with tutorials for how to do all of this, but take heed, it's not easy and it takes time, so plan accordingly.